Our keynote speaker this morning was appointed as the 9th Chancellor of the University of California at Riverside. He is an experienced academic leader who has spent his career at top-ranked public research universities in Michigan, Kansas, Missouri, and now California. He is also a first-generation college graduate who is a leading voice for academic excellence, student success, community engagement, and diversity. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our Chancellor, Kim Wilcox.
Thanks, Jack. Now, Rusty was disappointed Cindy wasn't here. I'm elated. Because usually you get 15 minutes. Cindy said, well, the schedule, we'll give you 45. And she's not here to argue. No, tell her I miss her. Tell her I miss her. As Jack just said, I've been Chancellor almost 3 years. I have a special place in my heart for Good Morning Riverside. The first day in my life I was ever in the city of Riverside, I arrived late one evening. Diane and I checked into the Mission Inn, stayed upstairs. Got up that morning, Cindy Giorgio, Associate Chancellor, who is retiring after 37 years at the university this summer. Cindy greets the to-be Chancellor and says, come on downstairs, there's a neat event going on. It happens every month. So the first event I ever attended in my life in Riverside, California was Good Morning Riverside. Yep. So. And here I am 3 years later with a whole different sense of the city, of the community, of the people, and just more delighted now than I was excited on that first day on the job. I've got lots of things I want to do today, so I'm going to, those of you know I can go really fast, whether I need to talk fast, I'll talk as fast as I can. But I'll try to get it all in. First, I've got some great introductions to do. You heard Jack earlier. I'm going to have our new Dean of Medicine stand, Deborah Dees. Deborah most recently was the interim dean of medicine at the University Medical Center of South Carolina. She's been in almost every role you can think of there. An undergraduate degree in biology and an MD, of course, but also a master's of public health, which is one of the many indications of her commitment, not just to healing in a traditional medical sense, but more broadly, communities and what communities mean. An expert in adolescent disorders and substance abuse, and a particularly keen interest in the health of underserved groups and underserved communities. I can tell you, when it's one of those rare cases, we went looking for a dean, and every review committee that met with Deborah said, that's the person to hire, that's the person to hire, semicolon, if you can get her. Well, so that put us in kind of we pull out all the stops to recruit her. We probably overbought rather, because I didn't appreciate how committed she was to what we were doing. And she may well have come for half as much money if I had known now today. But I think it's going to be a great marriage for the university as well as for the community. We have one more new dean who isn't able to be here this morning, Catherine Urich, our new Dean of Natural and Agricultural Sciences, of course, the original roots of our university. Catherine's a polymer chemist, comes to us from Rutgers, where she was Dean of Physical and Math Sciences there, and just like Deborah, traveled across the country because of what's going on at UC Riverside and what's going on in Riverside. It's a tribute to all of us that these talented people who could work anywhere in the world have chosen to come here and be part of our community. And lastly, Miriam Lamb, who is not new to the community but new to a job. Miriam is our new Associate Vice Chancellor for Diversity and Inclusion. She's the person who drives our conscience in terms of the demographics and composition of our campus and how people engage in our campus. Miriam's been on the campus for many years. She's the former vice chair of the Faculty Senate, an expert in Vietnamese language, member of our Language and Foreign Literature and Foreign Language Department, and a great member of the community, and was chosen because of her academic expertise, but also because of her values and perspective. So thanks, Miriam. I quote my mother a lot. I quote my father sometimes too. I tell a story. My parents bought a country grocery store just as I was going into high school, and my father dropped out of school in the 6th grade. So he wasn't a man of a lot of education, but he had some sense of how the world should operate, and he knew what should be done. And one of the first lessons to me when we bought the store was, when people ask you how business is always good. Business is always good. And so I always say business is good, and as a chance that that's part of my job is to build the hype. But I can tell you right now at Riverside, business is good. Every single indicator we've got is up, and some of them up markedly. And I want to talk a little bit about that this morning. These are a few numbers. I know it's hard to read in the back, but you can get a sense of the graphs. The bottom graph is overall enrollment. This is 1992 here and 2014 over there, 8 to 22,000, and that's a story that most of the community knows. We're going to add another almost 1,000 students to our campus next year as part of the agreement between the Chancellor and the Governor to add California undergraduate students to the University of California. We jumped right to the head of the line. We're going to get as many new students as Berkeley and UCLA, far more than most of the rest of the UCs, because we think it's important to our campus and because we think it's important to our community, but also because we think we provide something to those students that few other universities in the country can provide. This graph over here is our faculty count. 2013, we had 670. We now have 90 more faculty on the campus than we did 2 years ago. Those faculty members, of course, are important to the educational mission. We're trying to do a better job of providing resources and access to instruction and research for our students, but also, I believe, a huge asset to our community. 90 new PhDs, 90 new PhDs is a lot of quality people in our community. And this is, today, this is what we project by 2020. We hope to have another 120 so more faculty members on the campus. Excuse me. And by then we will have done a better job of being fair. And what do I mean by fair? Right now we have about 27 students, 28 students per faculty member. Berkeley has about 18 or 19 per faculty member. And to me that's just not fair. If you go to the University of California, it doesn't matter where you go, you should have the same kind of rich experience. And by golly, we're going to make sure that happens for our students here in Riverside. This graph over here is a little different. This is money. Those are dollar signs. This says 67.9. This says 100 million. 2012, 2015. That's research dollars from the federal government that come to the campus per year. 3 years ago, we had about $67 million a year from the federal government to fund our research. That's all the things that you can imagine going on in research, from surveys of constituents in voting districts to traveling to the superconductor and in CERN to do research on the molecules and the atoms. We've gone from 63 to $100 million over 3 years, importantly at a time when the rest of the nation's funding was flat. So we've actually eaten from other people to pull it into Riverside, and that's nothing but a tribute to our faculty. $100 million, my mother thinks of research and she sees somebody in a white coat with a test tube, and that's true. Some of the money gets spent on telescopes and microscopes and things. We have a microscope on campus that will show you an atom in a molecule. Okay? Like, whoa, okay? At least that's what they tell you. Who really knows, you know? I think I'm spending money on a lot of stuff that really isn't true, but I can't tell, I don't know. They tell you that's an atom, what are you going to say? But most of that $100 million is spent on people's salaries. It's not just the 90 new faculty members, but each of those many of those faculty members, rather, brings 2 or 3 other PhDs with them to run their laboratories, to collaborate on their work, and then they recruit several, sometimes dozens, of graduate students to come and be part of the operation, some for several years, and you know those in the community as well. So that $100 million is another, in my mind, human investment in our community. Now, so what have we been doing in the classroom? This graph is a little hard to read in the back, and so let me walk you through it. These are data from 2013, which is the latest national data that we have. And it is graduation rates. These are 6-year graduation rates. It turns out most of our average time to degree is about 4.3 years. So most of our students graduate within a reasonable time. Nationally, once you get to 6 years, almost everybody who's going to graduate has graduated. And that's why we use a 6-year graduation rate for comparison. These are 2013 6-year graduation rates. and they're by group. So over here are students who receive Pell Grants. If you're familiar with the K-12 system, we talk about free and reduced lunch as a measure of family income. Well, Pell Grants are the higher education equivalent. So these are students whose family don't have many resources. The next are Asian Americans, African Americans, Caucasian, and Latino. So if your family comes from limited means and you get into college, these are only students who are in college, you get into college, you only have about a 50% chance of graduating if you're on a Pell Grant. That's the difference that money makes. If you get into college and African American nationally, your odds of graduating are only 4 in 10. That's after you get in. And we know the difficulty of getting African Americans into college. And Latino, we're at 53%. Pretty sobering numbers. This is UCR for the comparable year. Yeah, thanks. Now, well, of course, doing better than the national average is a goal of ours. There's no doubt about that. But nationally, we're getting a lot of attention, not because we're doing better than the national average, but because all the bars are the same height. This is one of the few places in America where it doesn't matter what your background is. Rich, poor, black, white, it doesn't matter. You will do just as well as everybody else. Yeah. There's something special about Riverside, the University of California, Riverside, and I would argue the community that grew it and supports it here in the city, that makes this a special kind of place for students to come. And it's one of the reasons why I'm keen to add more students, because this is something that the nation deserves. Now these, again, are 2-year-old data. This is what we've been doing since then. They're going the right direction, which is up. So we're proud of these data, and we're proud of the opportunity for us to use this to help the nation. We're part of a national alliance of 11 universities, the University of Texas at Austin and Kansas and Purdue, national leading universities who are working to help the nation understand this graduation problem. But we can't, as a nation, survive in this competitive world with those yellow bars, and that's where we are right now as a nation. So what does that mean for us? I've pulled out 3 magazines that, it turns out, 20 years ago, U.S. News and World Report was really the only ranking in the country. Now there's dozens, literally dozens. I pulled out 3 of the primary, prominent ones for a little bit of information. First is U.S. News and World Report. There are about 3,000 universities in the country, and U.S. News and World Report, we're 121 out of 3,000, which is pretty good, pretty good. But I've listed here what they consider in these rankings. U.S. News and World Report has about 10 or 12 measures, but they boil down to just a few notions. One is exclusivity. So you are seen as a better university by U.S. News and World Report if you have a lot of people apply and you turn most of them down. Now, I don't know about you, but that kind of hurts my brain. The more times you say no, the better you are. That's only, I guess, true with teenagers, I suppose. You also get more credit if you have a big endowment, if you have a lot of money in the bank, if you're rich. And my mother didn't bring me up to believe that the rich people were the best people, but that's how U.S. News and Report sees things. And then reputation, what people think about you. And as a university that's only 62 years old, we're at a distinct disadvantage in terms of reputation. Time magazine, though, said, there's all these ratings here, you can't trust the data. Let's take it on ourselves. So Time, the editors at Time went to the existing federal data systems. There's an integrated post-education data system, IPEDS, and they pulled out data that are the same and audited across all universities for graduation rate, affordability, and access to financial aid or accessibility, thinking those are things that are important to America. And then they actually made a website, and these 3 measures come up, and there's little sliders. You can weight one 25% and the other one 50%. You can kind of adjust what you think are important. But when this website first comes up, they're all equally weighted at 33 1/3. And when that happens, we're number 1. There are places with better graduation rates, But there's no place better than us for graduation rate and this notion of everybody comes and succeeds together. Washington Monthly magazine took a little different tack. They said, let's look at social mobility. So if you're a very exclusive university that takes rich, smart kids, rich, smart kids are going to succeed no matter where they go, right? And so the change, the mobility in society is minimal. If you take, as UCR does, a range of people and make a difference, that's a huge change in kind of the social sense of the students in the nation. Impact to research, which is largely missing from the first two, and as I've said, research is what drives the UCR and what I believe is going to drive the Riverside economy in the next century. And then civic engagement, this sense of making a difference in the community. When you look at those three rather broad categories, we end up number 2 in the country. So when you hear someone on the street say, UCR, yeah, it's getting better, but it's still not highly ranked, just tell them no. It's as highly ranked as any university in the country, and more importantly, I believe highly ranked on the things that are most important to the country. Not how big your endowment is, but really what kind of difference you're making. Now, we've got other differences we're making. As I said, we're one of the most diverse universities for a large research university in the nation. But we have been not so diverse in our faculty and not so diverse in our leadership. And we're working on those two things pretty earnestly. This is now the leadership composition of our university after 3 years now that we've been working on this. I like to point out I'm the white guy in the middle. In case you can't find me, I'm the pale one. But this is the vice chancellors, the provost, the vice provost, and the deans. There's Dean Dees up here. This is Dean Urich here that I just mentioned. Miriam is, where's Miriam? Below me, yes, thank you. There's Miriam. There's Tamika. I heard Tamika mentioned earlier. About Sue, yeah, there's Sue. And Cindy, who's going to retire, is there. Yeah, and there's Jim Sand. Yeah, everybody, people calling out names. Yeah. You recognize the names. We're very proud of this at UCR. This is also arguably the most diverse leadership team in America. And I'm not proud because the faces all look different one from another. Everybody's happy that it looks different from my face, I know that. I'm proud because these are the best people we could find in the country. We're living what people want to believe, that inclusion and excellence are not exclusive categories. They're the same thing. If you go looking for the very best talent, and you're open to inclusion, and you're deliberate about making sure you make the right decisions, this is what happens. It takes care of itself. And I've joked, a lot of chancellors have to go recruit somebody, and oh boy, you better recruit a woman because there aren't even men around. When you do this, you get freedom to go find the best people, because I don't have to find an African American. I don't have to find a white. I don't have to find a woman. I can go find the best person because we've got a mosaic already. We're very, very proud of this. We're earnestly and hard at work trying to do the same thing with the faculty. Our faculty is not as diverse as the rest of the university. It's the last big piece, and we're attacking that now as we grow the faculty. It's a key part of our agenda. We want to be the leader in this notion of inclusive excellence in America, and we're right there. I want to talk a little bit about finances. This is the cost of educating a student at the University of California. This is averaged across all the campuses. Over here, this is 1990, 95, 2000, 2005, and then 2015, or 2012 rather, 2006, 2012. Again, you have to get data that you can find. A few notions. First, here's the take-home lesson for today. The cost of a UC education has gone down over the last 20 years. Say it out loud. The cost of a UC education has gone down over the last 20 years. You're saying, Wilcox, I read the paper, that's not true. No, what you've read is the price we charge you has gone up, but the cost has gone down. This blue part is what the state of California gives us. In 1990, they gave us $17,000 per student. Now they give us $6,000. This is inflation adjusted, but even without inflation, it's a huge, it is a decline. So they've cut us by over half. in these 25 years. And we can't cut our budget by over half, where we'd have to shut down. So what we've had to do, the yellow part, is the tuition component. So in order just to keep ourselves alive, we've had to charge more, but the cost has gone down markedly. So when you hear people say, how come they don't cut costs? Well, in most businesses, that would be pretty impressive cost cutting. But it hasn't been enough. And I'm not here to argue politics. This is a celebratory season for the mayor. But the notion of what the future is what's important to me. I believe that we are making huge and important investments in our community and in our state. And we have to find some way as a state to think about how to support that in the longer term. Just as Rusty said, Riverside is not about next year, it's about years out. Well, so is UCR, and I hope so is the state of California. So the extent to which you can help people appreciate, my best friend right here is giving me the evil eye. Cindy's not here, who's gonna know? Don't go squealing on me, Nick. I've only got, they're texting Cindy down here. Okay, so I'll stop. Next slide. Well, these are, this slide is a notion of what actually happens to students at UCR. This is how many students actually pay tuition at UCR. These are California undergraduate students. It turns out 71% of the California undergraduate students at UCR pay no tuition, okay? So we've cut the costs, and for those students, anybody whose family earns $80,000 a year or less, tuition is covered between the Cal Grant system of the state, our own University of California grant system. We cover everything. So the notion that this is getting out of reach for people is another false notion perpetrated by the media. It makes great headlines, but it's simply not true. 71% of our students pay no tuition at UCR. And another, get these categories right, another 16% only pay part of that tuition. So we're working really hard, and that's why we end up number 1 and 2 in the country, because of these kinds of efforts. Real quick, boss is jumping me. This is, I want to shout out to everybody. I'd have everybody in the room stand up who was part of CARB, but the whole room would stand up. The California Air Resources Board is moving their research facilities from El Monte to Riverside. They're going to locate right on the campus. For those of you who are familiar, this is the 215. That's kind of campus over there. There's the intersections that Andy was talking about earlier. This is Iowa Street. There's University Avenue. This is University Extension. And this is where the new CARB facility will locate. We hope to be breaking ground here in the next few months, and occupancy within a 2 or 3 year period. 400 employees, most of them engineers and scientists. A huge boon to that strip of land where Andy was looking. Winchell's Donuts is over here, I think, about here. So it's going to be a great expansion on University Avenue. And I can't say enough about all the help, all the elected officials in the city and the county and everyone else who made this part of our future. I've said, with the resources that we have in air quality research at UCR and with CARB, Riverside will be, and it's not a stretch, the air quality research center of the world. There'll be more talent and activity here than anywhere. Yeah. Oh, I got more slides than I thought. I'm hurrying. We had our first Division I national champion, Vesta Bell, in the hammer throw this year. Our women's basketball team went 16-0 in the Big West Conference. By the end of the season, they were down to 7 players, 16-0. Most of those players right here from inland California. Both the men's and the women's golf teams won the Big West tournament this year. Huge step forward for the program. We have been 2 years now developing a master plan for the campus. I could talk for an hour on this, so have me back next week, please. This is the campus. The gray buildings are there. The yellow buildings are spots that we're going to be building in the next several years. Up here in the north, our plans are to put in a major new expansion of student housing. As we grow the student body, we've got to find places to put them. We're going to infill in the middle with science laboratories. A new medical clinic for Dean Dees right here that will combine our student health clinic. Way over here, didn't see Superintendent Hanson in the room. That's the site if the bond issue passes, vote yes. That the RUSD STEM Center will be located on our campus right by our chemistry building and our science library and our botanical gardens. We're gonna spiff up our campus, make it even more beautiful, and increase its connections. Andy talked about traffic here on University Avenue. We're going to put a transit hub right there so that buses go right down, boom, right into campus, don't have to turn. We're going to open ourselves up. The citrus growers community is building a new research laboratory. Citrus greening has ruined the citrus crop in Florida, eliminated an entire industry in Florida. It's coming this way. We just broke ground on a new facility. This is on the north side of town out by Bournes, where we're going to have a containment facility to do research. This is a picture of the dedication of the bell tower in 1966, 50 years ago. I know many of you were there. And many of I meant that as a compliment, Jack. Yeah, some of us weren't there. But I like to look at this. I like to look at this picture and think what those people thought about the future and how much of 2016 they might have been able to imagine. Well, we have the chance right now in 2016 to think about 2066 and what others will be talking about us. So thank you so much, and thank you, Riverside.